What's up, fellow nerds, and welcome to Not Your Status Quo, and we've got a new series for you guys. We're calling it What's Next, and what we're going to do here is we're going to kind of give you guys a bit of some theories of what we think is coming up next in a series, and this time we are talking about what we think is coming up next with WandaVision.
We're 3 episodes deep in WandaVision, and so far we've gotten quite a bit of sitcom homages, which have been great. You know, they've been very patient with getting things out, but we've noticed a pattern. Each episode, there is a few more breaks from reality than the one previous. In the first episode, it was really just the choking incident at dinner, and then in the next episode, we had the helicopter. And the radio, voice coming over the radio and cutting her hand. And then in the third episode, as she was giving birth, all heck was breaking loose. So I do think, Wanda is created this pocket reality. She's using her reality warping powers. But as she exerts more energy, like bringing life from nowhere, it's causing this break, and it's causing something that is allowing sword agents, AIM, Hydra, whoever else is trying to break in, to kind of get in there. And so we're going to see more of that. Next episode is probably going to be in the 80s. We're thinking it's Roseanne from what we've seen in some of the trailers. So I think there's going to be more breaks. And Elizabeth Olsen did say in the next episode, there is kind of a huge shift. So I think it's going to be less 80s sitcom and start getting more and more into the story.
Keith, you're right. We have seen Easter eggs in these first 3 episodes. Like for Sword, the devil's in the details comment.
The devil's in the details, Bev.
That's not the only place he is.
The Mephisto reference in that. The mysterious Ralph, who never makes an appearance. The beekeeper, the comments coming over the radio. But where are we going next? Like Keith said, it's going into the 80s. First 80s show that came into my head was Cheers, but obviously Roseanne works. Wanda in this, it's the more we go, it is falling down a little bit more. I mean, Wanda realized in this show that Monica Rambeau she realized that she wasn't from her reality, and she expelled her. And Agnes and the doctor and Herb all seem scared of making references, and they do make references, to being trapped. So they don't come actually out and say the words that they're captives or they're trapped, but we know where they're going. So is Wanda really in charge here because she was able to expel Monica? Or does everyone know that and they're just placating her? Or is there somebody else, pulling the strings and make, and she's under their control? This whole thing kind of reminds me, now, you know me, I got to do it. This whole thing reminds me of an episode of Smallville. Season 4, episode 21, called Forever, in which a student captures the most likely to list of the senior class in an effort to make them stay in where he thinks is the height of his life, so that he'll always have these friends there, and it always gets worse after you graduate. That's what he thinks. And that's what, Wanda expelling Monica. Could that be like I'm trying to make my perfect reality here, and you just messed it up by showing some reality, so you're out, And in that show, back on Smallville, the students would play along under penalty of death. And, so are the WandaVision characters also afraid that something's gonna happen to them if they don't play along? Or do they know who's actually in charge? These are the questions, folks.
I'm actually glad that you brought up that episode, Dave. It kind of reminded me, actually, when you were mentioning that, it immediately made me think of an old Justice League animated episode where they had kind of a very same idea. It was where the Justice League actually went into another dimension, and they met kind of alternate versions of themselves called the Justice Guild. And this entire pocket reality was actually being kept alive by this guy who had mutated and had mental powers. And not only was he creating this sort of idea of what he considered this the ideal world with his favorite superheroes alive in it, but he trapped all the citizens of this town into it as well, and they had to keep up their roles and they had to keep pretending and playing their part, or else, he would do something to them, perhaps even kill them. So yeah, I'm getting a lot of hints of that in WandaVision, especially with this latest episode, and it makes me wonder, how much do the other neighbors and the other citizens of this town know? Whenever Vision talks to his friends that he's met around town, or whenever he was talking to Agnes, it seemed almost like they kind of know what's going on. And I don't know if that happens when Wanda begins to lose control, and sort of like a moment of when they're released maybe from the fog. I haven't quite figured it out yet, but I have a feeling that we're going to get a lot more of that as we move through the decades in these different TV show episodes. And here's my thought on that. So you guys think that it might be where pulling from Roseanne. I think there might be hints of that, because it seems like what they're doing is in each one of these, they seem to pick like 2 or 3 shows from that decade, and they sort of pull from all of those, like where you get like old 50s shows like Dick Van Dyke and things like that. But I think now that we're moving into the 80s, I think we might end up getting some perhaps family ties. We might be getting into some of those shows, or I briefly mentioned Mork and Mindy. Maybe we'll get into that. We'll kind of have to see what they pull from. But what I'm looking forward to, honestly, is when they get into the 90s sitcoms. Those are the shows that I'm looking forward to, when we start getting into your Step by Steps and Full House and things like that. So I'm looking forward to that. So far, that kind of that kind of goofiness, it hasn't quite I'm not bored of that yet. I've actually kind of enjoyed the whole homage to different sitcoms and everything. But as far as the weirdness, I kind of hope they get to it soon. As far as where I think this is all going, I have a feeling that this is eventually going to lead into maybe Hydra playing a bigger role in this overall series than perhaps any of the other supervillains that we spoke about before. But we'll have to kind of wait and see.
I do think Doug makes a good point. Whether it be Hydra or AIM or something else, something of this much power that would draw Sword down to kind of be taking a look at, it's going to draw other parties. So I think we're definitely going to see Hydra or AIM. I think we're going to have almost a 3-front thing. We're going to have who's ever influencing, Wanda, which I think is Mephisto. And I do think Agnes is working for Mephisto in this pocket reality, because she seems to be the one who, kind of gets everything in order. She's the one who shows up when she found the helicopter to kind of bring her out of it. She talks about, oh, Dottie is the queen bee here, so be wary of her, but keep it off me. When she says charmed in the first episode to her, like Wanda being charmed by somebody. And when we see Herbert, High Evolutionary, and her talking, and the Vision goes over there, she's the one who's really pushing, oh, don't trust Monica Rambeau or Geraldine. She's out to no good. And she really implants that in all of the people that, hey, Sword is bad. We need to keep them out of here. And I think that's at Mephisto's request, because he wants to keep Wanda happy. And in doing so, it's creating these pocket realities. We started with the 50s and the Dick Van Dyke Show, and then we moved into the 60s with Bewitched, and then we got the 70s with the Brady Bunch. And one of the things I think is happening, and I'm going to reference one of my favorite comedy shows of all time, The Good Place. Spoilers for The Good Place if you haven't seen it. They think they're in heaven, but they're really in hell. And it's kind of they're trying to make them think it's heaven as a kind of new way to torture them. And each time they figure it out, they start all over again. And I think that's what's kind of happening here is as soon as something weird happens and people start realizing it, they start all over again. So the next episode may not be the entire 80s. We may see it start out in the 80s. Something's going to happen, a little more breaks from reality. And then bam, we're in the 90s. We see Doug Step by Step. We see Full House. And then pretty soon, we're going to just be totally out of this reality. Ever since she expelled Monica Rambeau in the last episode and opened up the outside world a little bit. I think we're going to get more and more to it. And I think that's what Elizabeth Olsen meant when she said kind of a shift in paradigm in the next episode. I think we're going to see a lot more focus on S.W.O.R.D. and what's going on outside, along with what's going inside.
Just as long as we get back to reality before we get to the Big Bang Theory related episodes.
Yeah, like Keith said, we're moving into the 80s, and it seems like, you know, as they advance in years, the edges are starting to fray, and we're getting to see a little bit more what's coming up. My only thought is that maybe Keith said that maybe he thinks Agnes is working with Mephisto. But for me, I'm thinking maybe, you know, after their little speeches, Herb and Agnes, about how they're trapped and the doctor says he can't escape.
Bermuda awaits, and my car decides to poop out right at this moment.
Maybe they're in there because at the, you know, the request of S.W.O.R.D., because Wanda is so far gone and they know something has got her, so they're sending them in to try and wiggle her out. I don't know. That's just a thought I have. Maybe that could be going in that direction, and maybe they're just trying to save her from things that aren't real.
One of the other things that I keep thinking about is the name drops that we got at the end of episode 3, Pietro and Ultron.
He was killed by Ultron, wasn't he?
Which is what led Wanda to expel Monica Rambeau from the thing. What if, because now she's thinking about them, what if we get, you know, Quicksilver sighting? What if we get James Spader coming into the show playing Wanda's or Vision's dad? Well, let's say Vision's dad, because what is a huge, you know, sitcom-y sort of cliche? Oh, the dad's coming over. I'm telling you, if during the Roseanne, if there's a knock at the door and it's James Spader as Vision's dad, I'm going to lose it. That's going to be pretty amazing, because I think James Spader knocked it out of the park as Ultron. And I think Age of Ultron is very undervalued as an MCU movie. So I'm really hoping we see that sort of sitcom trope of one of the parents coming over to visit, and it's either James Spader as Ultron or Michael Fassbender as Magneto. That would just be absolutely nuts. Now, I don't think we're going to see Michael Fassbender, but with all the multiverse stuff going on, who knows? Maybe we see Evans Peters as Quicksilver, Michael Fassbender as, you know, Magneto. We don't know really what's going to happen down the road, especially as she kind of has a bigger break with reality and what's going to happen with her reality warping powers. When she turned those butterflies from the mobile alive, she was like, oh, I didn't mean to do that, which makes me think that that's kind of a hint that she's starting to lose control a little bit. And that's going to be bad. Anytime she's lost control of her powers in the comics, very bad things have happened. You know, no more mutants, you know, absolutely wiping out the Avengers almost at one point. So, you know, it could get very dark and very bad here very soon.
Overall, I'm not enjoying this show yet. It just needs to pick up the pace for me. At first, it was a little quirky with the old TV themes and, you know, the 50s and Dick Van Dyke and all that. But now, to me, I know not to everybody, but just to me, it's getting a little old. It isn't to say that each acting performance isn't incredible, because they all are. They're able to fit their acting into each one of these, you know, eras of television, and they pull it off. What you would think they would be from that, you know, from that era. So they're doing really good. To me, the writing is a little off. The whole Vision being alive again, with no mention how, just a speculation and acceptance. I understand this 3 shows in. I don't like it. There had to be, to me, like a sprinkle, some foreshadowing in, so we're not just accepting it just because it's the name of the show. You know what I mean? Maybe at least one scene in the beginning showing Vision waking up and not knowing, you know, like an unknown character in the room just leaving the room or something. This is just ideas. You know, then we're wondering, okay, so we know somebody did it, but we don't know how they did it. I know we're already thinking that, but to me, it would add a little layer to that. But I'm sure they have an explanation, but it's taking a little too long to get there. I'm hoping this next episode takes it up. It takes it farther, we're gonna find out more about Sword being involved, or if we're gonna get to see the big bad villain. I think it's going that way. I'm just a little impatient so far.
That's what we think is next. What are your guys' thoughts? Leave it in the comments below. And thanks for joining. If you've lasted this long, please subscribe, like this video, and we'll see you next time on Not Your Status Quo.